Today we really worked a lot on percents and trying to figure out how in any problem you can find the percent or the total or the piece. So remember 7% is just 7 out of 100. Percent means out of 100. Per 100. You can write it as a fraction, 7 over 100, or most commonly you're going to write it as a decimal, 0.07, because this says 7 hundredths. But all it means is 7 out of every 100. It's just a ratio comparing any amount to 100. You can find the percent of any number just by multiplication. So 25% of 120, to get that part, I just multiply 25 hundredths times 120 and I get 30. 75% of 120, again, is just a part of 120, and I just multiply the decimal form, 75 hundredths, 0.75 times 120, and I get 90. And this should make sense because 25% is the same as a fourth, and a fourth of 120 is 30, and this is 3/4, so I need 3 of those to make 3/4, which is 90. So whenever you're finding the part, and it's less than 100%, you just multiply. Alright, so we started off with just something really familiar, like 50% of 250 is 125. And you just have to, all of you know that's a half, and you just have to be able to make this into a decimal. And remember, you move the decimal place twice because percent means out of 100. So I'm going to take out the symbol that means out of 100, so I have to put in the decimal that means out of 100. So I don't need that 0, I could keep it there, but I moved it, the decimal was here, I moved it twice to the left, and now it's 0.5, which you know is a half. And if you multiply 0.5 times 250, you get 125. Because that is 50% of 250. Remember, to solve any percent problem, you're always going to have this word of, which means multiply, and the word is, which means equals. So the percent of the total is the piece. So now what we're going to do is, what if I didn't know one of these parts? How do we find it? Well, if we didn't know the percent, okay, we can write an equation from this. It becomes n% times 250 equals 125. And you know how to solve multiplication equations. When I don't know the number that I multiply by, I solve this equation by doing the inverse operation or dividing. So I simply want to get n by itself, so I divide both sides by 250, and n is equal to 5/10. And that percent sign means we have to make this into a percent sign. And you just do that by multiplying by 100. So 5/10 becomes 50%. Which we know was our original. It is 50% of 250 that equals 125. Okay, what if I'm missing the total and I don't know what it is? Well, I just have an equation. It says 0.5n equals 125. Just like before, we would need to do the inverse operation, divide both sides by 0.5, and I have my total. And 125 divided by 0.5 is 250. And that's my total. And if I'm looking for the piece, I just want to know this part. This is just multiplication. There's nothing to undo. N is already by itself, so it's just 0.5 times 250. Alright, so you tried some on your own. So 7% of what number is 91? So we're looking for the number, the total here. A little piece of it is 91, so this number has to be a lot bigger than 91. So I change this to a decimal, 0.07 times what number equals 91, divide both sides by 0.07, and I get 1300. And then you should always check. 7 hundredths times 1300 is 91, so we know that we're right. Now I'm looking for the percent. So what percent of 160 is 338.4? Multiply equals, divide both sides by 160, and I get 0.24. This tells me I have to make it a percent, so I multiply by 100 and I get 24%. And when I check it, I multiply the decimal form, 0.24 times 160, and I do get 38 4/10, and I know I'm right. Alright, this is the Christina way. Remember, she said the easiest thing is when you don't know this missing number, because you just multiply. That's all you do. Alright, then we went to a real problem where I'm going to have to pay for my meal, and I'm going to have to pay the tax on my meal. So 100% of my meal is 100%, and 18% of my meal is 18%. So if I add these two percents, I need to find 118% of my meal. I have to pay for all of the meal plus the tax. So I can do this in one step rather than two separate steps, I'll show you the two steps in a minute. If I just add the 100% and the 18% to get 118%. So I just need to multiply the cost of my meal by 1, which is the meal itself, and another 1800ths. And if I make this into a decimal, remember it's two decimal places if I'm taking out the percent sign, I multiply and I get my total bill price, which is $43.07. So it's just a multiplication problem. But I also could do it in two steps. I could take the meal itself and I could just find the 18%. That's the tax, which is $6.57, and then I could add it to the meal and I still get $43.07. But I have to do it in two separate steps. Because remember, this one here times 3650 takes the 3650 and adds the 6.57 in one multiplication problem. So it's a shorter way, but you can always do it in two steps if that makes more sense to you. Okay, the same thing with this one. I'm going to get a discount. The store is going to take off 15% of that regular price. It's normally $320. And they're going to subtract 15%. So the regular price is my P, and to find my discount, I have to multiply that by 0.15. So 0.15 times 320 is the amount of money the store is going to subtract from my $320. So to find the sale price, I have to do some subtraction. So I have to take my regular price, subtract my discount, and the sale price is $272. Now I can do that in two steps, or I can do it in one step. If they're going to take off 15%, well, you can just subtract the 15% from the original 100%. And now that means I'm going to pay only 85%. And now my sale price is one step, 0.85 times 320. And there's my sale price of $272. Notice the same thing I had before, $272. But if I subtract first from 100%, I just have to do one multiplication problem. I don't have to write this out. I can do that in my head. So that's a little bit faster. But if you need to do it in two steps, that's fine. Okay, then you practice some. And for this problem, 4% of what number is 76? I asked you, should the number be bigger or smaller than 76? Well, we're looking for the big number because this 76 is the piece. It is the 4%. So we're looking for a number that should be a lot bigger because that's only 4% of it. So I can write this as an equation, 0.04 n equals 76. Divide both sides by 0.04 and I get 1900. And to check it, I go back and I multiply my 4%, 400ths times 1900 to be sure I do get 76, and I do. No, you're right. What percent of 210 is $33.60 or €33.60? Well, should my percent be bigger or smaller? Well, it should be smaller because 33.6 is smaller than 210. So I go and I take n% times 210 equals 33.6. I divide both sides by 210 to get my n by itself, and n is 1600ths, and I want to make it a percent, so I multiply by 100 and it's 16%. Then I can check it. 0.16 times 210 is this piece, 33.6. 45% of 500 is what amount? And I said, should the number be bigger or smaller than 500? Well, I'm taking a piece of 500, so it definitely should be smaller. This is just straight multiplication. Make this a decimal. So 45% is 4500ths times 500 is 225. And that makes sense because half of 500 is 250, and this is a little less than half, and I got a little less than 250 when I got 225. All right, then one of these where you have to find the 100% price of the jeans and the tax. So Emily's buying a pair of jeans. This is how much they cost. She will be charged, sorry, that should be a D, 4.5% sales tax on the jeans. Find the total cost of the jeans including the sales tax. So we have to pay for the jeans and the tax. Well, 100% of the cost of the jeans plus the 4.5% tax of the jeans is 104.5% of the $44.50. Put your decimal point twice to the left to take out your percent sign and make this a decimal. So I just multiply 1.045. The 1 is the price of the jeans. The 45 thousandths is my tax. And I multiply it by the cost of the jeans and I get my total price in one step, $46.50. So you could do it in two steps. You could just do the tax times the price, so $2 is my tax, and then I have to go and add the tax to get the total. So $46.50 is $2 more than the $44.50, so that makes sense. All right, now my bicycle's on sale for 20% off. So if I want to do this the fast way, remember the entire original cost of my bicycle was 100%. Well, I can just subtract the discount, 20%, and that means I'm going to pay 80%. And now I just find 80% of 425. 0.8 times 425 is $340. Done. So I can do it in one step, or you can do it in two steps. You can find the discount by multiplying 0.2 times 425 and getting $85, and then you can subtract from the original price the discount and you get the sale price. Notice this is the same thing as this. So the 80% of 425 gets you there faster because you don't have to go and subtract the discount. But either way will get you the right answer. All right, so do 1 through 10 on these pages. Show your equation and the steps to solve it. Check and make sure your answers make sense. And then you need to finish this week's 3 hours and 15 topics by Sunday night. If you finish orange and green, it's 7 to 8 topics. Have a great weekend.